Welcome back to Coast Files, your podcast for ocean mysteries and true crime. I'm Chantel. You did it.
I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Megan. And I love ocean mysteries. It's my favorite.
And that was the third take, and we're going with it. Let's just...
that was good.
Not you know what?
I am glad that most of this is unscripted, apart from that one line. So,
and that one line was a doozy. So I mean, I don't know if you could handle.
Okay, I'm just that we're going with that one. That's great.
I feel like that has the most pressure because what if someone clicks on this and we never say who we are and they can't read? They're never going to know what podcast is.
Eric often watches Kevin Smith's podcast, and he's saying that he invented the character Silent Bob because he can't memorize any lines at all. So he's like, I'm just going to be Silent Bob.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's, what a great idea.
I always wondered why he was silent, but he was just so like expressive with his face, so it worked still.
It really did, yeah.
Although I'm not into trench coats, and trench coats got a really bad rap, as you know, in the 2000s. So everything else loved. Backwards hat.
My brother and his best friend went as Jay and Silent Bob for Halloween ones. Jonathan and Nick.
I can see.
They were great.
I can see that.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I assume your brother was Jay.
Yeah.
The talker.
The tall blonde.
Yeah.
Although he was super red back in the day. Is he still red?
Finley once went as Silent Bob.
That makes sense.
Yeah, he rocked it.
For Megan's Halloween party, he went as, what's his name? James, the comedian.
I can't remember. But and
he gets like,
it's not sequence, but it looks like that.
Sequin. Is it James? Is that the first name?
I totally forget who he did. But I remember his costume took very little effort.
Yeah.
Finley, get at us and let us know when you read this or hear this rather in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yes, because
this will we'll use this as a quiz to make sure Finley is listening because I expect him to reach out after.
Smart.
We'll test him, make sure he's a true fan.
I mean, he shares the podcast info more than the three of us do sometimes. So he's pretty on board. But is he listening?
And he likes everything that we put up and comments on everything. He is a true fan and a true friend.
You guys remember the show Flight of the Conchords, right? That was out.
Yes.
So he's like the Mel character who's like the only fan of the group. So Finley, thank you. Love you.
Thank you.
And honestly, we're doing a shout out. Thank you to Andrew Stroken as well, who has also been like,
oh my God, Stroken.
Thank you. Always commenting. So he gives us positive comments on YouTube. I see that.
He's fantastic. And honestly, it's like him and my mom are all over the YouTube comments. And that's pretty much it. So appreciate that big time.
And to everybody else who has commented and like sent us things. I know we're going to mention this again, but like,
Yes. Thank you so much.
And it honestly might not seem like you sharing or you commenting or you liking is doing much, but it literally is. Even if it's like a little emoji, it takes a few seconds, but it means so much to us. And I don't know how algorithms work, but apparently that's a good thing for it. So please help.
And also just like sending us the love too. Like it's just so nice to get those messages. It's just so heartwarming. Like this morning from Ariel.
Oh my God. It makes me like get all warm and gooey inside like a brownie. I love it.
It just makes me feel like our like, we made this thing. This is our baby. This is our communal baby, and it's just
and other people think our baby is cute too. Yes. So that's
validation.
And hopefully they're not lying to us and they're being honest. Because I've seen some babies that are.
But I feel like most people wouldn't.
No. And also, beauty's on the inside more so. So
exactly.
This is not a baby Disney podcast, by the way.
We love. Well, I really love babies.
Yeah, you really do, and you do have two very cute babies. So I mean, you don't even know what we're talking about because your kids are adorable. So completely off topic. Let's talk about my topic that I'm going to do today.
Oh, right. The purpose.
That's right. No, this is not just a group chat. Although, I mean, it almost is.
It's not just to watch Chantel stumble over her words for 6 minutes.
Just like
we will be keeping all that footage. So.
Yes. And there's the reel for this week's episode.
Yeah, there we go.
So today we're going to be grabbing our passports for an international trip. International? Thanks a lot, Chantel. Now I'm doing it. We're heading to an island just outside the city of Venice. It's called Poveglia, and it is claimed to be the most haunted place on Earth.
Oh. Wow.
No big
I
deal. It's kind
Okay,
of like that,
I'm
world's
so
greatest
intrigued.
boss, but it's the
Yes.
most haunted island.
Work trip.
So- No, I'm not
Yes.
even kidding.
We have to go here.
I've watched a few YouTube videos that kind of just talk about the lore. And, while it's quote unquote illegal, I mean, you just ask the right fisherman, the right boater, and eventually it's like a couple euros exchange hands and you're on your way. So it's illegal, but you can
You
get there.
can't you can't go here?
Like, again, yes. Like,
For those listening, she is shaking her head.
in the no, but like, yes, you can. It's probably like most illegal sites. Either you sneak on yourself, or for enough money, someone will take you, and they literally just drop you off because it's an island that was built for people to come ashore. So it's very accessible if you have a boat, or even like a stand-up paddleboard. So I have some photos. These will be on the website, and also a few will be posted with the Instagram post. So ladies, if you want to start looking through the first three pictures, they're all kind of maps. And before we started recording, I don't know if Chantal caught that, but I do describe the first photo as a Wi-Fi symbol. So I say, looking like a little Wi-Fi symbol in the Venetian lagoon, Poveglia is about a 1 hour's drive to the closest viewpoint on land. But like I said, don't get too excited. The Italian government has banned anyone from stepping foot on the island.
Well,
that has
just
literally...
Well,
it
hasn't
hasn't stopped
haunted.
anyone.
And there's also a little like bed and breakfast like really close to it. Like
Not on the
mainland?
island, but there is
No,
a
on the
long,
mainland?
there's a long strip. I think it's called a lazaretto. Please don't quote me on that. But that is accessible. There's roads, there's things to do. So if you were to drive, you want to look at the island, or you want to be a law-abiding citizen, that's how you could see it.
So it's
I
literally
have
like surrounded by land at some point with this like water in the middle and the island's just in there. Is that what I'm looking at on this third picture?
So the Wi-Fi symbol picture, so that is the island. It's 3 mini land masses put together.
Okay.
The thicker middle part is the original island. So that is a true island, not man-made.
Okay.
I'll get into it, but the little kind of punctuation period in the front is a man-made structure. And then the land in the back is also man-made. But the 3 little parts together make up Poveglia.
Okay.
Also, to my 2 Italian listeners, Julia and Stefano, if I'm mispronouncing, please let me know. But don't, because I'll cry.
She'll cry that she upset you.
Well, I'll cry that I looked it up 1,000 times, and then, you panic because you're like, I don't speak Italian. Speaking of speaking Italian, we have a mini language lesson. So Poveglia in Italian, pronounced Poveglia, I think, translates to poor.
Oh.
Based on Google Translate.
Okay.
Oh. Okay.
Maybe there's something lost in
Poor
translation.
island.
It's a little on the nose. The island is first mentioned in historical documents as early as 421 before Christ even.
How?
So that's old, man.
Yeah.
It looked a little bit different back then with like I mentioned, the outermost mini landmass not existing until much later. So those sections were man-made. The one in front was offered, it was part of, I think, a 5 or 8 like post structure that were built all the way around for defense. And this one remains. And then the back portion was just used by, adding rocks to build it up, added soil on top, and now it's part of the
How
island.
do they make an island? Like they literally just
like
pour,
that,
rock and crap into the ocean or the water?
Yeah, lots of big chunky rocks, and I guess like nowadays it'd be concrete, I'm sure.
So it must not
And then
be
you build it
that
up.
deep there, right? Like for people to be able to build an island?
Man, I wish I would have looked that up.
Okay. I mean,
I-
I just
It is
don't
in
understand.
a lagoon. It's in like a protected area. So we're not talking about the middle of the ocean. So
Okay.
I mean, deep is a relative term, but back in the like Middle Ages, they could build an island. So
Yeah. There's a lot of man-made islands out there. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and I mean, Venice is essentially like underwater technically, which is why it floods all the time.
Oh yeah, right, yeah.
And their roads are also
Dubai
water.
has a ton of man-made islands. They made a man-made palm tree-shaped
Yes.
island. They made a map of the world.
I've
I
watched
don't know.
so many videos on exactly what you're talking about. That should be an episode. It's fascinating, and also just like money, man. Money.
Yeah, I actually stayed on one once, so I
yes, you
can share my
did.
pictures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Girl, you
You're making more work
Okay,
for
we'll
yourself.
talk about man-made islands. I know I lucked out for my awesome
so
friend, Laura.
If you want to look at picture number 4, that is a historical drawing of it. It doesn't really have anything to do with what I'm going to talk about, but I actually paid for this image. I paid $3 to an archive for this image. So really soak it in. It looks like a
I
watercolor
love it.
postcard.
So we can definitely put it in
wanna
the website then, right? Since
100%.
Yes.
And I also talked to a very, very nice woman that runs a website, and I got permission to use her photos as well.
Oh,
so like,
amazing.
look at me doing stuff. Speaking of that, the next few photos, so the next picture 5 through 9, it's just kind of like general looking at the
Wow.
island, the exterior, some of the interior. So you can kind of
tiny.
flick through. It's very tiny. So feel free to kind of flick through as I read.
Okay.
Okay. This is like so creepy, you guys. We have to go here one day. So, Poveglia is said to be the most haunted place on Earth, and let me tell you why. The island has a long history as a checkpoint for incoming ship merchants and sailors who would be asked to quarantine for 40 days if it was suspected one of the crew was sick or worse, demonstrated symptoms of the bubonic plague. Ever heard of it?
Yeah, once or twice.
The plague comes back like 8 times during the story.
Amazing.
I mean, probably why there's so many ghosts, because it was just, man, like we thought COVID
Not a
was
good
bad.
time.
Yeah, no, not a good time. Fun fact, though, the Italian word for 40 is quaranta, and this is where you get the modern word for quarantine.
40 from 40?
Oh.
Yeah.
Why?
And why?
So 40 days to quarantine.
Oh.
I mean, I just said it, but it's okay.
Okay,
You
well,
didn't hear me.
I was staring at
I was
the
focusing on the
islands.
plague. Yeah.
Our
So
brains
you both
were
your brains.
About the plague. Yeah.
I hope I can figure out how to edit in little brain things while you're talking, and I'll just little thought bubbles, and Lindsay and I will be somewhere else, and you'll be talking.
Yeah.
Well,
It'll all
unless-
make sense.
And I mean, when you're listening to this, that means that all the photos are out. So please look. The island looks, I mean, it looks small, and the only things you see are these like historical buildings and this church, which is from the 12th century. So I can see
because we're in.
can see why you're getting distracted, because the photos are, well,
They
they're
are
they're
mesmerizing.
haunting.
This is your fault, actually.
I would say I'm sorry, but I'm not, because I love this case. So how the Italians managed the plague led to the development of modern day quarantine procedures, such as limiting travel and prohibiting contact with the sick or items that may have been infected. If you recall, during COVID, we didn't know what was happening. So I was like washing my groceries. They would come in the house, and I was like wiping things down. I didn't know. So we learned all these tips and tricks from the Italians. So thank you. On a sadder note, they would also brick people into their houses if they were found to have the plague, so that they could not leave.
Okay, so like at least the government
Okay.
didn't take it that far during COVID.
Small blessings.
Yeah.
Small miracles, small blessings.
They may have tried to give a
I mean-
curfew, but we didn't
Well,
get
and
bricked
it's
in.
just very sad. Like I mean, these poor people, there was no cure. There is no cure. So, as soon as you had symptoms, it was already a death sentence, and they couldn't risk more exposure. So, it's heartless, but I can understand the panic of what do we do? And this was back when, I mean, I'm going to get into it, but like thousands of people were dying a day.
Do you talk about witches at
Wow.
all during this?
I do not.
Okay, so
Do you have some things to say?
yeah, well, just because so predominantly single women of the time of plagues would have cats, and cats were known to kill and catch rats, and rats were known to carry the plague. A lot of women were seen as witches during plague time, especially single women, because they were less likely to get the plague, strictly because they had cats that weren't letting the rats into their house.
It's just always women's fault.
Yeah.
Like whatever is happening.
No, but I just found that very interesting that, like, yeah. So just because, single older women who had these cats, the crazy cat
this is
ladies
totally-
weren't getting sick.
Yeah.
They must have been
This
witches.
is totally reminding me of the bit from, oh my God, it's tipped my tongue. You all know, because it's gossip at the corpse cart.
Do I?
Yes,
I mean, I
where
listen to so many of them.
Monty Python. There we
Oh.
go. Where they're trying to figure out
out
the woman is a
Jeanette.
witch.
Yes.
It's like, well, does she weigh as much as a duck? Does she float? And that's how they decide.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's like how how they would get to their conclusion.
Honestly, it was
Yeah.
basically that ridiculous back then. But yeah.
Well, it was like, okay, well, if she drowns, she wasn't a witch. But if she doesn't drown, then she was a witch. So
kill her.
Either
So
way,
either
she's
way,
dead.
she's dying. Yeah.
We're just deciding
Okay, let's
which
get
way.
back. I want to get back into this really, really fun
Yes,
stuff.
please do.
I'm just kidding. It's not fun. From 1346 to 1353, the bubonic plague, or Black Death, ravaged Europe and greatly affected Italy's larger cities like Venice. And as a reminder, Venice is the major city outside of where Poveglia is. In 1348, when Venice had thousands of plague victims dying per day, Poveglia was a location of up to, now this has been contested, this is the bigger number, up to 160,000 deaths due to the plague.
Jesus.
So you
Just
saw
on
how
the
small this island was. So they're inferring that over this time period, people were being sent there out of the city to essentially die of the plague on Poveglia. And it's been quoted up to 160,000 people died there.
Wow.
Okay.
What do you think they did with the bodies?
Yeah.
Are you gonna
I'm gonna get into
touch
it.
on that? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because I
Literally
don't
my
see any
next-
graveyards here. So.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Oh, okay.
Due to the high number of diseased bodies, the plague victims were burned and buried in mass graves called plague pits.
Oh, amazing. I've definitely heard
Fun.
of Plague Pit
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
I do love alliteration. In this case, it's very sad. There were so many bodies on the island that it led to the creation of the back third of the island, essentially 50% soil and 50% human ash.
Oh wow.
Jesus.
That's their fertilizer, essentially.
Humans make for good plants,
well, good
I guess.
calcium, right? Plants need calcium. So,
This is the power of positive thinking.
yeah.
While some of the Black Death's victims would have died due to the disease while in quarantine, some are said to have been burned alive to speed up the process. I hope that that's not true.
Oh no.
Like you're
Yeah.
already dying. So imagine you're, on death's door and they're like, well, let's just push you through that door and burn you while you're in a pit.
Let's make this a little bit quicker. Yeah. Okay. But like more painful.
Although like that can't be a quick way to die.
No.
Anyway, in 1527, the Doge of Venice, as soon as I saw Doge, I thought about the
Dog.
dog, Doge. But it's not a dog in church, I promise. I looked it up. The Doge of Venice, which was the highest role of authority within the Republic of Venice at the time. So like the mayor, but more like the premier of Venice. So that's a Canadian term. Lindsay, what is an American equivalent?
Of
So,
the
like-
premier? I guess, I don't know, a Congress.
The congressman of Venice. Okay, fill in the gaps. I don't know.
Does Venice have a president? I don't know how it works.
Wow.
Well, Pope.
We're all university grads. This is not good.
I think Italy has a president, I assume.
Okay.
But, I guess, well, in Rome, the Pope's in charge.
Well, in this case, it's the Doge, okay? So
Okay.
this dog.
The Doge.
So
Dogecoin?
he offered the island to the Camalados I promised myself I was going to practice this before, but I did not. Hold on. It's a nightmare. Camaldolce monks? The monks. He offered monks the island who refused the offer.
Yeah, they don't want that haunted
Well, that's why.
place.
So in the 12th century, a church had been built on the island along with some other buildings. So the refusal was surprising because the monks would obviously move in. They would have space to live. They had a church already. But it's certain that the monks thought the island was cursed. Which, like, I can kind of see how they...
Story checks out. Yeah.
Story checks out.
Yeah. The math. Yep.
In 1645, so notice how we're jumping ahead. So 1645, the Venetian government built 5 octagonal forts. I think I said 8. I think I got caught up on the octagonal, so 5. So one of them remains. So the Venetian government built 5 octagonal forts to protect and control the entrances to the lagoon. The Poveglia octagon is one of 4 that still survive. This is the mini island in front of the main part of Poveglia, like I mentioned.
Okay.
So I don't think that was ever used for anything
wow.
much. I'm
It is
sure
that shape.
back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a man-made, which I think is impressive.
So there were more of these, but
Yeah. No.
one
So
remains.
there's 4 that exist, and I probably got my wires crossed. I thought that they were all around the island, but they were at the base of the lagoon entrance, kind of spread out. So likely there would have been, soldiers stationed on each one, probably with supplies. So as boats are coming up, they're getting checked, looking at cargo. And then again, if someone's sick, okay, head over to that island. In 1776, the island again was used as a quarantine station for those suffering from the plague and other diseases. And it became a checkpoint for all goods and people coming to and going from Venice by ship. Okay. Just more info. So with thousands and thousands of bodies buried on the small island, the next logical step was to build a hospital in which to treat the mentally ill.
Of course.
I mean, that's what I would do.
Well, I mean, as positive in that they aren't planning on killing all the people then if they're going to try to treat them.
Oh, ironic, Lindsay, that you say that.
What year are we in again? How were people treated back then with
I'm being too optimistic.
I know. So
everybody was
point,
lobotomized.
So at this point, I will go into a little more detail, but we kind of skipped ahead a little bit. The mental asylum was built upon the mass graves in 1922, and the leading care of the patients was a well-respected doctor who saw a unique opportunity to begin experimentation on the patients while far away from the watchful eyes of officials.
Perfect.
Why can't we have nice things?
So on a haunted burial ground, you want to put a mental health facility where you're going to do experiments.
Totally reminds me of the plot of Poltergeist. They moved the headstones. Yeah. Didn't move the bodies. Oh, there were no headstones. They're called plague pits. Jesus. And there was tens of thousands of people. So after this cruel and torturous experiments of mutilations, including lobotomies, the doctor was said to have been driven mad by unseen presences. I say multiple presences. Presences. Plural. After enough time, his mental state deteriorated. He walked to the 12th century church on site, climbed to the bell tower, and leapt to his death. But some say that he did not leap or take his own life, but that he was pushed. He was drawn to the tower by spirits and forcibly pushed out of the bell tower's highest window.
That reminds me of a movie.
I'm thinking of The House on Haunted Hill.
Maybe that was it.
The one from 2000.
I was just thinking of the first season of Game of Thrones when the
Don't spoilers.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. Like the show.
This first season.
I know, I'm kidding.
But it is the end of the first. I won't even share.
No, but so like you can say it. My God, if you haven't seen it by now, like Bran is pushed out a window.
Pushed out, yeah.
Because a brother and sister love each other very much.
Tower, so
it was a little.
Yeah,
tower.
he saw too much. He saw too much.
He saw way too much.
And then he saw a lot later. So.
My God, that show really was so good until it just stopped. The facility remained in use until 1968, when it was finally closed, and the entire island of Poveglia was all but abandoned.
In 1968.
And yeah. Okay. So you can look at the photos that I have there of the abandoned interior, and it's creepy as hell. So what if I told you that basically all of what I just said was myth and rumors? Virtually all of the facts that I've just told you are inaccurate,
you were
blown out of proportion, or straight up false and made up.
I'd feel a little hurt.
So,
but
I have some trust issues.
Yeah,
I know. Listen, well, and I mean, an abandoned building in Italy, which is like, you can't get cooler than that, is still scary.
So wait, there was no asylum that got built there. There was.
So some parts of what I've just said are based in.
Oh yeah, because I can see right here.
Facts. Okay, so I'm gonna go through.
Okay.
So really, most of those myths are based in like partial truth.
Okay.
But way blown out of proportion, to the point that even Wikipedia has it wrong. So I'll go into some depths. It's actually quite mind-blowing. This is the true history of Poveglia.
Wait, what you're saying
now? So let's
now?
first start. This is all now true.
Okay, so now we can believe you.
Okay. This is all now
Chantal,
true.
are you buying this?
I don't know. I have trust issues now.
Maybe I'm a ghost right now trying to just like do a fake out.
Would make the most sense.
Yeah.
You're from
so
this island.
let's.
Yeah, you're trying to get us to go to that.
It makes sense because my Italian
tower
is fluent. Grazie mille. You see?
Yeah.
Do you believe now?
Yeah.
So let's start with a large number of plague victims. Do you remember how many I said?
168,000, 77.
So like 160,000 people. That's a lot. So they were supposedly left there to die, burned, buried, creating the back part of the island. And some quick math will prove that widely incorrect and downright false. Based on the quoted number of 160,000 plague victims, it would put the population of Venice at over 400,000 people based on that 30 to 40% death rate. So they know the death rate. So if you do backwards math, you'll know that that is not true because Venice, back in this time, never breached 200,000 people.
I was actually going to ask what the population of Venice when you said that. I was like, how many people was
Yeah,
it?
so
But you also said people are coming in from other like ships and stuff.
Yeah.
So like, okay, maybe
but
over
not
time.
not tens of thousands. Like you may have some ships that have a crew of like 60 or something, but no.
Yeah.
So fake. You busted. In 1348,
Mythbusters.
God. Yes. Well, I mean, I didn't do any of the work. I'm just relaying the information. In 1348, the plague had indeed reached Venice. So like that obviously happened. The island was said to house the sick, yet there is no mention of this whatsoever in any records. 40,000 Venetians out of 110,000 had died, but Poveglia is not mentioned at all. So there are records from that time. People were dying. They were bricking them into their houses. They were probably doing, mass pits or burns, but Poveglia, the island, is not mentioned at all.
Okay.
And they kept some decent records too. So what was true about the latter half of the 14th century is that Poveglia became one of the main entry points into Venice, and it was a location in which the rulers would collect taxes from traders. They would catch wine smugglers, which, I mean, I probably would have been a wine smuggler.
Yeah.
If
Yeah, I'm gonna have to confiscate this from you.
I'd be like,
I'm-
you slide me a couple euro, I'll take that case, and you can be on your way. I would have been corrupt for sure. By 1375, you had to stop here before entering Venice. So big deal, very, very serious, kind of like entering like a checkpoint, crossing the border from the States to Canada. And at this stage, there are records of how it was a very important location for merchants and how there are detailed records of the podesta's budget and duties. That's the person appointed to kind of manage the island. All these different names, Doge, Podesta, kind of cool. So there are detailed records of all of those goings-ons, but there's no mention whatsoever of all the death and catastrophe of the Black Plague, the Black Death impacting the island, which at this point, like I said, had reached Italy and Venice.
Okay.
So it's just not catching up. It's not lining up. If things are happening on this little tiny island that is crucial to the city of Venice, there would be mention of housing plague victims. There'd be mention of...
So sorry, people actually did live on this island though?
Yeah, so it, like I said, it was more like a checkpoint.
So they lived on there as in like they worked on there then?
They lived and worked. So they had built buildings. So there were quarters. There was a church. That church was built in the 12th century. I'm going to go into more detail, but right now it's kind of like, imagine we had an island like off the coast of Nova Scotia and people coming from Europe had to stop there before they made their way to the mainland. So there were like staff that, I mean, back in the day,
Pier 1?
no, because that is on the mainland. So this is like
true, yeah.
So we had people that lived on the island. I'm sure it was like in, contracts or what have you. So there were inhabitants, but it wasn't like they'd have like a general store, it was
I was
kind
going
of
to
like a
say,
working island.
they would
Yeah, we
have to
have a
go
few
to land for like provisions type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they did start growing some of their own food and some wine. I'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, so don't think of it as like the island of Cape Breton. It's not like that. It's kind of like a working island.
Okay.
People still live there, but it's not quite the same. People had hundreds of years ago lived there, and then they were kind of kicked off their island. You know what? Let me get to it because that's actually my next point.
Yeah. Oh, I have one question though.
Yes.
Was Poveglia mentioned like in the history books, just not associated with the plague? Is that
It was only mentioned in these little cases of where it became like a merchant ship, naval ship checkpoint, and it becomes a little more involved, but it's really more just like a shipping stop.
okay?
And that's really it. So where was I? Because I was rudely interrupted. Here we go.
How dare we have 1,000 questions, Lindsay? How dare we?
I know.
I mean, honestly, I kept having
exquisite
questions.
commentary.
There's one great video that had tons of research that blew my mind, because the story I told you first was the same story I heard over and over and over. And then this guy, I don't know if I go into depth, but he essentially works with 2 Italian researchers who are like in Venice, and they go through all these historical documents and archives, and they kind of bust apart all the rumors. So it's just like no one in Italy cares enough to like correct anyone.
You're just like, yeah, let them believe what they want.
Well, yeah, and then I watched a couple.
Maybe the truth isn't as interesting sometimes.
It's not.
Yeah.
Because I watch a couple of videos and they have all of these mediums, which I'm like a very skeptic believer, but they had all these different mediums who are like, oh, I can feel all this and that. I'm like, that literally is proven to not have happened. So it's like, you know, if that's your bread and butter, yeah, you want to entertain. So if you look at it for entertainment, they did a great job. But the truth is like a little more meh. In 1378, there was a war between the Genoese and the Venetians. So those are just 2 cities in Italy, but this is before Italy was unified. So those 2 guys are fighting. Mm-hmm. The Venetians won, but before they left, the Genoese completely destroyed all the buildings on Poveglia, displacing the residents who called it home. So it was inhabited, very, very, very small, because this is before we even add on those 2 extra parts. So in the late 1300s, those people were displaced, moved to the mainland, and then for really centuries they try to make it back onto that island in a permanent way, but then the government kind of, like I mentioned, takes it over, uses it for, you know, for city business, and then later for military business. From 1400 to 1423, the island was used for supplies and the repairing of merchant and naval ships. Since there were now many people living on the island, working on the island, a priest was appointed to live there, to oversee the chapel, and to conduct daily masses, because if you didn't know, Italians are extremely religious.
What?
So they need a church. They need a church more than they need Mama's marinara sauce. I'm so sorry. In 1923,
we just lost both our Italian listeners.
Oh, Julia's like, oh, delete.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't have you at my wedding anymore.
Julia, I'm so sorry. Actually, we got married on the same date. It's 1 year apart.
Oh, yeah, I remember you said
wow.
that. Yeah.
So the same anniversary.
Did you guys hear that? Since there were now many people living and working on the island, a priest was appointed to live there and oversee the chapel and daily masses, because, like we said, Italians are very religious. Having a priest there full time was extremely important. Also, the same year, the plague comes back again. My God, this plague just doesn't stop. Like, we thought COVID was bad, seriously. So
it's almost like there's a flu season. It's like a plague season. Like, oh, it's
much,
November.
much worse.
Time for the plague to come back around.
So 1423, another wave of the plague hits the area, and about 40 people a day were dying from the disease.
So that's fact.
Wow.
This is all fact.
Okay.
So
I don't trust you, so I have to ask again.
These are all the true facts now, I promise. Aside from meticulously recording the salary of the priest, there is again no mention of the island being used as a hospital or a mass burial site at all. An ongoing theme is that anything that pertains to the salary and the duties of any government officials is kept with like extreme detail. Mm-hmm. So it's very telling that there's no other, like, there's information about everything. Oh, today we did a repair on this ship and this ship, but don't you think that they would have written down, oh, today 10,000 people were dropped off and we had to bury them? Like, there's no mention whatsoever, and this is researched by 2 locals in Venice going through archives.
Well, I mean, especially since
are these photos?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Are the photos you put up, are those real photos though?
Yes.
Okay.
Those
Yes,
are all
I'm
real.
definitely wondering about this bed there, which maybe you'll get into.
I'll tell you.
But what was I going to say? Oh, especially where like the people weren't dying from like, you know, causes that they'd want to hide. Like it was the plague. You think that they would have said something like to that effect.
And I mean, I mean, we all know this just from history, that it wasn't that people were being shady and like burying these graves of mass people. It was just the sheer number of bodies. They had no other way of dealing with it.
Well, yeah. Plus, the bodies would hold on to more disease. You had to get rid of them. You had to burn them. You had to do that type of stuff to get rid of them. So
it's not that this was anything like sketchy.
Yeah.
Like, I think that this was a reality for a lot of people in Europe, and the fact that there's no record is just
it does seem
like there is a record in the city of people dying, and there's none of this island. So that just to me means that
Unless
the
they
island.
wanted to keep it all hush hush.
But it wasn't. That's what I'm saying. Like, they have all the records of everyone dying. Stop trying to add ghosts, because there are some.
I mean, I'm coming
Okay.
out with like the reasons why they wouldn't have hid it as well, but like I do still want it to be ghosts. Like a lot of people still died during the plague. I'm sure there's still a lot of ghost places. So
Maybe some people did die on the island.
well,
if you
most likely.
just
Yeah.
wait a little bit and it'll come up. In 1468, the Magistrate of Health rebuilt an existing structure into a hospital. This is real. This happened. Its purpose was to isolate and quarantine the crews coming into Venice who may have illness aboard, aka
Okay.
not the plague, because you would be dead. So
Yeah.
just of other more normal diseases.
That's fair.
So this is real. Through the 1500s, it continued as an important site for naval and military activity. And remember those monks that I mentioned in 1527 who were offered the space on the island for their monastery, but refused due to their fear and superstitions?
Yes.
Well, the truth is that they had taken a vow of silence. So rooming with a bunch of drunk and rough and rowdy sailors just didn't suit them. And that's why they turned it down.
Okay, that's fair.
Like, there was a priest.
not their crowd. I get it. Yeah.
Wasn't their crowd.
Yeah.
They didn't want to, be what do you call it? Peer pressured into.
Well, to me, can you imagine? You know what that reminds me of? Ace Ventura, Pet Detective 2. Remember when he's at the monastery and everyone's all silent and he leaves and they like break into celebration because like they hate Ace.
Yeah, because he was so loud and
he was insane.
and
Yeah. Guys, remember the plague?
No.
It comes back. So from 1575 to 1577, another epidemic hit Italy and Venice with no mention of any effect or involvement of the island of Poveglia. So this is like the 5th time and there's still no mention.
But isn't it a little weird?
So actually, this is.
I was just gonna say, isn't it
ahead.
a little weird that there isn't any mention, considering that they did know to quarantine some people there? Wouldn't there at least been some mention of people being brought to the island to be quarantined from other places? The plague's coming through, quarantine them to make sure they're not going.
There is, but it wasn't the plague. So that comes up like in my next couple points. But up until that point, it was not plague victims coming in. It was just other.
So what I'm
Diseases that
gathering
weren't so
from
bad. Yep.
this is Poveglia is actually the safest place to be during the plague.
Fair.
I would say most islands, right?
Isolation,
And there's there may be an opportunity to buy the island.
Maybe there was something all to this isolation. What do you mean? Like now? Can we buy it now? How much?
Let me continue.
I'm still too poor, but how much?
Oh yeah, we can't afford it. However, it may be like about the price of a home in the GTA. So,
Okay.
1630, another plague visit. You thought she was done.
No,
She's back.
No.
So this wave killed over 50,000 people, but again, Poveglia was not mentioned or involved. And at this point, it had still never, ever been used as a mass burial ground. The supposed massive burial ground that was on the back half was actually only the final resting place to a few locals who had died, or the odd sailor who had died of an accident. The rest was a vineyard and a garden. I was going to say graveyard.
A vineyard.
There was a couple people who had died. So I guess a small part was a graveyard, but mostly it was like a vegetable garden and like, I guess a very tiny vineyard.
Okay.
But I mean, they're Italian, so like I get it.
Yeah. I assume there's vineyards all over Italy. I haven't been yet.
Yeah.
but-
So when I went, I guess it was, oh my God, 2022, there, we had a little lemon grove on ours, but some houses had like mini.
You actually went last
vineyards.
year.
My uncle.
No, I went. I went in 2023. Thanks, Lindsay. I went last year.
I know your timeline. I got you.
My
thank you.
Uncle Real and Aunt Darlene, they have like one of those, fencing type things over their deck, and they grow grapes there and
A
would make their
hoopah?
own
Oh,
wine.
a pergola.
Is that what it's called? Where it
Pergola?
has like the diamond fence things. It's specifically to grow grapes, basically, and they grow grapes and make their own wine.
Well, let's go there this summer then, and
Well,
we'll try
that
out their
sounds amazing.
wine from
We
last
won't be
year.
able to visit my uncle anymore, but we can definitely. My aunt will take us in. Arms
We'll
wide
go
open.
when-
All right. All right.
Well,
We will drink.
We'll
to
pour out a
Real.
drink for him.
Yes,
God.
we will.
Now, see, but like, so, I mean, obviously being buried near a vineyard just gives like good vibes to me. So I already like where this is going. Now, what I just mentioned about kind of having the couple of folks that had passed away on the island, there's a few other parts that kind of creep up, and this is where the rumors likely started. So again, like we're now into the like 1700s. So like that's when they started. So it's not like thousands of years of history of ghosts and all these things. It's just more recent-ish. So in the later 18th century, while ships were still required to stop for health checks and potential quarantines, a couple of vessels that arrived were not so lucky. So on June 5th, 1793, a small fishing ship had two infected sailors, but it did spread, and eventually 12 other sailors had died. Shit. They were buried on the island of Poveglia.
Okay.
So that's a few.
So that's
here.
like 14 sailors then, because it started with 2 and went to 12 more. So 14 of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. 6 years later, a Spanish vessel came to quarantine, and 8 of their sailors had died, and they were also buried on Poveglia.
Okay. So we're having quite a few people who are dead here.
Mm-hmm.
It might
But
be
it sounds like they just happened to pass on the island coming through.
So they were coming through to Venice, and this was the first time any plague victims had come to the island. So the health checks had been going on forever, but it was for, less serious diseases. So at this point now we have 20 plague victims. We have the 12 from the first ship, and we have 8 from this more recent one. So that's 20 official plague victims, a far cry from the 160,000.
Well, I mean, give or take 100,000,
plague victims. Yes,
I mean, 20 ghosts is still a lot of ghosts.
Well, and then don't forget, we have the couple sailors who may have died during accidents, and a couple of the locals. So there could be like up to 30 ghosts.
And I mean, all of these people seem to die before their time, so they're all pretty upset, I would assume.
Yeah, and I would say the plague victims probably are the most upset, really.
So was everybody already dead by the time they got to the island, or were any of them like quarantined and died on the island itself, or do you know for sure? It
sounds like a few of them did die on the island after being, found out like, wow, you guys are sick, and they did have a hospital at this point. So, but I mean, again, it's not like they were shipping people from Venice to this island to die. These were the only plague victims so far, and they were coming from outside. It doesn't even say if the other ones, the first 12 sailors were even Italian. Okay. We know that it was a Spanish vessel 6 years later, so they're all visitors. So finally, leaving the bubonic plague behind us, we reach the 1800s, which is like modern history now because Italy is so old. In 1814...
1800s is not old in Europe at all.
Yeah, I know.
People get
it's
so
like,
excited.
Oh, you mean like
here.
yesterday?
Like this building's from 1800. Wow.
I know.
In
We're
Europe,
like, hey,
whatever.
this building's 150 years old. Let's make it a heritage home. And Italy's like, that was yesterday. Like,
well, so the place that I used to work was built in 1856, and that continues to blow my mind. And they're like, oh, that's like my grandma's house. What do you mean? A little bit different. Okay. So where are we here? Okay, oh, she's dead. Yeah. But it was her house. In 1814, the island was transitioned into a naval health station, which it remained until after World War II. And then I'm not going to continue on from World War II because I have a few more facts in the middle.
Naval health station? So like just a hospital?
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Like a check-in?
For the Navy.
Yeah, so it was a military base sort of, and that's where I guess if you were in the Navy, you're sick, you'd go to this place. On April 28th, 1828, a giraffe quarantined for 40 days.
What?
And it was a gift from the Viceroy of Egypt to the Emperor of Austria. And Lindsay, I'm sure you know this because you are our history person. Austria at this time controlled Italy, so that's why it was going to Italy, because the Emperor of Austria was running the show. In October of 1866, I mean, I was like, oh yeah, I guess I don't really know much. Anyway,
I don't know much either. So
October 1866, Italy fought to become unified and restored, removing the current Austrian ruler. And in 1888, a modern hospital was built on the island. During World War I, it was home to a POW camp, which is like, that's kind of like negative vibes. Doesn't say if anyone was killed there or had died there. It was attacked in 1918, but sustained very little damage. It's a very tiny island, so I don't know if maybe it hit offshore, maybe a big wave came on. I don't know. But
at this point, did it have the other man-made additions?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So the one in behind was built when the, sailors and priests were kind of working.
Yeah.
And like I said, they built it to have a little gravesite for the 3 people who had died, plus to grow vegetables and then to make wine because priorities.
You need wine. Yeah.
You need one.
That's basically
and then
water there. So.
And then the octagon on the front,
octagon one,
that was built hundreds of years ago. So that was there for a long time. Okay. During the 1920s, there was great civil unrest and practically a civil war happening in the city of Venice. There were 2 institutions for the mentally unwell, one for women, one for men, and likely that was more than enough for the area. And there's also no record of a third facility existing anywhere, but especially not on Poveglia. So Italy was going through a lot, and so the thinking was that if you're almost going through a civil war, I don't think it was actually called a civil war, but it was like fighting in the streets. These 2 groups were just kind of going back and forth. They were kind of trying to prioritize what was happening there and now. So they're trying to say, we already had 2 facilities, one for men, one for women. So the idea of building a third made no sense. They didn't really need it. There's also no record. So again, there was no mental asylum built.
So wait,
but
where
here's
were
where
those
again,
built then?
On the mainland.
Oh, I didn't write down the locations, but there was 2 already existing. And
But not
the
on
idea
the
is that
island.
no. So 2 already existed. They have records and they still exist to this day.
Oh,
so they're saying
then
that
why would we bother putting one
Yeah.
on the island? But then what's this?
why would
Are you gonna get to it?
well I'm getting
okay, well hurry up! Don't tell me to look through the
because-
photos and then not tell me what's going on.
well I don't think I said look at number 15.
I don't know. They're not
15
numbered. You
was-
said just go through the next ones. They showed the creepy stuff.
Yeah, we don't have
so-
numbers. I just have a
Again-
whole album open. I'm going crazy
Do you think
here.
that maybe we should add numbers onto the photos going forward?
Maybe.
Like that actually might make it easier. But again, this is where, there is always some truth that kind of leads to the fiction.
Okay.
Because after World War II, the hospital on Poveglia was converted into a civilian facility, part hospice, part nursing home, shut down in 1969. So they're assuming that doesn't really matter what you call it per se. It was not a full-on insane asylum, but people of every walks of life and age are going to have, mental troubles, mental illness.
A lot of people
especially
in nursing homes do have mental health
have
problems.
dementia,
Yeah.
or
I mean, that was the floor
or
that
there
I
could
worked
be-
on. It was considered
Yeah.
like basically a psych floor because everybody was Alzheimer's and dementia.
So
and
Yeah.
So Chantal, you're essentially hitting the
and-
nail on the head. So while it wasn't like an insane asylum, as is quoted, I hate that term. It's scary, but that's not correct. There is evidence of a psychiatric ward. So there is a photo that we'll put, and
which makes sense.
it
Most
does-
hospitals have one.
Well, exactly. But this is how you build a legend. You see this old decrepit building. You've heard stories. You see the psych ward, sign. So then you kind of fill in the gaps and make it as scary as possible. There was never an insane asylum. Like I said, there was no mad scientists butchering patients, nor did they throw themselves off a bell tower. I mean, guys, that would be in the paper.
Yeah.
The 1920s, someone took a crap and it made the news. So like that, that would have been reported on. So if you can't believe anything else, believe that.
I mean, there still might have been a rogue doctor or nurse working there. Just saying.
Angel of death.
Yeah.
But again, there's no record of any kind
Maybe
of.
they didn't know. Maybe they never got found out.
Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes you can't just convince people of the truth. And Chantal is a good example of that.
Yeah.
I have one more. I mean, listen, so do I. Like I always say, I'm a very skeptic believer.
Yeah.
The thought of this is like the best ghost story that I've ever heard. And so I think that if you're into that kind of spooky stuff, which we are, not that you want people to have been tortured or died, but just the story is just so gripping. You're like, wow, I can't believe that's real. And like, it's not. So that's
I mean,
you're like,
it's
oh, shit.
inherently creepy just based off it being abandoned and run down. So
Well, and also, I mean, just a hospital bed and again, this shut down the late 60s, but just something about that like metal frame bed just gives me goosebumps.
It's the way
why
the
is there-
photo's taken. That's why. It's
100%.
like-
And why is there always a wheelchair in
but
the
that
corner?
nice window
It just-
view. Come on.
I know.
Back in the
I
day,
mean,
this would
brings
have
it-
been prime room.
Well, I mean, if we, go to Florence Nightingale, her whole thing were for people healing was that they needed light, they needed water, and they needed fresh air. So this is like the perfect room for healing, according to our girl Florence.
It brings a new meaning to, like the outside coming in, because there's literally trees inside some of these rooms.
Those vines. Is that
That's right.
Is that the grapes there?
My God, I wish. Probably not. One more little fact that is not brought up in any story, which I think is even cooler. So in 1971, and I didn't go into depth, but 1971, art thieves stole priceless works of art. I forget how many, but they were priceless, I tell you.
Okay.
And when the police offered a reward for their return, they I'm not sure if they told on themselves or they tried to kind of skirt so someone would get the reward money for them, but they had stashed them on Poveglia.
Oh.
Because they figured who was going to go check out this abandoned island. I thought that was really cool. That and the giraffe were like, oh, that's kind of cute.
Yeah. Did they find all the artwork, or is there still some?
Oh yeah, they're like, okay, it's hidden. I guess in the psych ward, that's where we hid them.
Yeah, we didn't think you'd want to go there, so.
Well, but who would think, right? I guess, and the locals. Some of the videos that I've seen where the goal is to make like a ghost show, the locals will just pretty much say whatever because they're getting paid, so they make it sound spicy. But everything that I've looked up that is coming from the locals themselves, they're like, we used to go there as kids, hang out, drink, have sex, camp, like. They don't believe in any of this
So maybe
stuff.
the parents made it into like spooky stories so that the kids would stop going there and doing
Sounds
bad things.
like maybe a lot of
Really,
life
quote
was
unquote.
created on the island,
Ooh.
not just taken away.
Okay,
That's actually funny.
If you're a Poveglia baby,
well-
please reach out to us. Let us know.
God. You'll be the listener of the year if you are.
Yes.
I have now some recent true history, and I mentioned the island could be for sale, and that's where this comes in. So in the 2000s,
Let me get my checkbook.
groups. You better get a couple checkbooks because it's not like cheap. Local government groups began promoting the island, promoting the sale of the island while it was making rounds on early internet blogs and websites because, again, the story was so creepy. That's kind of when it started to gain traction and these myths and legends and horror stories kind of kept popping up. So then a couple years later, 2014, the Italian state auctioned a 99-year lease on Poveglia, hoping that the buyer would redevelop the island into either a multifunctional resort, a concert, festival venue,
that would be
or something for the locals.
Place for a concert.
Right?
As long as it's
Although
not
with,
like a Fire Fest situation, then it's like all stranded up. Yeah.
Can we do Firefest as an episode?
I saw
Because
something that they're planning on
Yeah, it
doing
was on
a
an
second
island,
Fire
right?
Fest. Like they're trying it again.
let's go.
Yeah. Well, no thanks, but
But okay, so
I wanna
but
hear about
ideally
it.
they wanted this to be like an island for the people. They wanted it to be one that could be used and kind of get some fresh life because it's been abandoned at this point since the late 60s. Italian businessman Luigi Brugnaro
I believe you.
had the highest bid of 513,000 euro, although it was far under what they had hoped. Luigi had planned to invest another 20 million euro into his restoration plan. However, the lease was not approved for a bunch of bureaucratic reasons that it was just a lot. Essentially, he had a plan and the plan didn't kind of check all the boxes that the state wanted. At this point, it's kind of like beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah.
They had, I think, 2 bids, like just give it to someone who's going to turn into something good because it's been abandoned this whole time. So at least this way it gets to
or make the lease
have some new life put in.
a little shorter than 99 years, and that way.
Well, I think that 99 years essentially gives that person full ownership, like to do something long term.
I just mean that person wouldn't even be alive at the end of you could say even 25 years. And
Well, then it becomes an inheritance.
I don't think the lease wasn't the problem. It was essentially that he didn't, I guess, have a plan that the government thought was good enough.
haunted island, that would have been a huge.
I know. I would just
tourist
I would try to
attraction.
unload it. I think the thing is that it has such historical significance that they still want to retain ownership, but yet give enough creative license so that you can do what you want, but then they still retain it. Because 99 years, you can do a lot in 99 years, but the Italian government still would always own it. 1 year later, you can look at the very last photo of those two fine-looking folks. A private group called Poveglia per tutti, which I think means Poveglia for all, aimed to raise over 25 million euro to create a public park, marina, hostel, study center, and a restaurant on the island. That to me sounds cool.
Yes,
Yes, it does. Yeah.
It's almost like a big commons, but it's on an island,
So kind of like the island here in Toronto Island.
which I've never been to.
You need to go.
You've never been? You didn't go to the
No.
beach with us at least once?
No,
No.
she didn't. No.
Anyway,
All right,
That's kind of
we'll
what they
take
do
a
there.
cry
Like they
about
have
it.
like a nice big park there. They have like you can play frisbee golf there. There's like a big thing for that. You can go biking all over.
I actually
it.
had to Google
Different
what those
beaches.
things are because I'm like big chain thing in park and it's like frisbee golf. I'm like, oh, I had no idea. So anyway, so that is a photo of those two folks who kind of like represented the group. So unfortunately, though, as of the time of this episode, April 2024, the island remains abandoned and untouched. Now, where I live in Mississauga, outside the main city of Toronto, you see this a lot. You'll see a plot of land, not an island, of course, but you'll see a plot of land with a big sign like staked into the ground. A proposed change is made for these lands, and you'll see that look that way for years. Or sometimes they'll build, part of a foundation, and then another year and then all of a sudden overnight a condo is built. So I'm just hoping that things are in the works, and maybe in 1 year's time. I know in Italy things move very slow in terms of permits and paperwork, but hopefully in our lifetime the island gets some new life
I
breathed into it.
remember
Because
when I was in Italy, they said like one of the reasons why sometimes it can take so long is because there's so much history and so much heritage in Italy that it's very easy for them to be digging, and then they hit something and they have to call like the historic society to come in and see, is this something of value or is this something that we
can
can
see
just
that.
throw away? And it can take so long for those people to come in and do that it like delays things by years.
Yeah, that's what
Well,
happened
and I
when
mean,
when I was in France. I was staying in this city, and they were building like a little trolley tram system, and they hit mass graves. So they had to stop and make sure that they properly identified, well, not identified, but like took care of the bodies, gave them.
Probably figure out why it was a mass grave,
burials.
where it came from.
I think it was
well,
from the
I
like
imagine-
ancient time. It was so old. It was like hundreds and hundreds of years old. So, but
we'll see. And I think at this point they're still trying to nail down what will be built. So imagine if they get approval, and just imagine if they do find mass graves, like then this is all bullshit. But hopefully they don't. They only find like, the 30 or so.
Yeah.
So to this day, unauthorized visits to the island are prohibited, but there may be a chance to get a special pass through the government. So I did see that you can get permission, like if you want to do research or something. So you have to ask for it. Like, so to go and have a look. No, you probably
so a
wouldn't get
podcast
permission.
episode could be research.
Well, I mean, we just slip some nice gentleman a couple bucks and he drops us off.
But
and picks
does he pick us up again?
Daybreak.
Yeah. He's like,
So-
you can
so
swim,
scared.
right?
So from all of the YouTube episodes that I've watched that are recent, so some of the shows I watched are from like early 2000s, but all of the YouTube episodes are within the last 4 or 5 years. Yes, they meet some people and they're like, yeah, sure. I'm not sure how much money exchanges hands, but you exchange cell phone numbers and they drop you off and they pick you up the next morning.
Okay.
And I mean,
The
it's
next
creepy.
morning,
So it's-
I don't know if I want to stay overnight,
Well,
but
I mean, we wouldn't have to, but that's what most of these folks did. But it is still officially prohibited. So the myth of the most haunted island in the world continues to be perpetuated by books, paranormal TV shows like Ghost Adventures, Scariest Places on Earth.
did they go there?
Yes, they did, and the episode is hilarious.
Ooh.
Like it's just
Is that the one with what's his
they're-
face? Ghost Adventures?
Yes, Zach Bagel
Bagels.
Bites.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a really funny episode because watching it after I had done my research, I'm like, this is all bullshit. Which some people will say that ghosts in general are bullshit. But if you're quoting storylines that like are proven to not exist, it just makes it like look so cheesy.
Yeah, of course.
because he was saying like, oh, the doctor, I can sense the doctor, and he climbed up here. It's like there was no doctor. Anyway, so
I mean,
Poveglia is a small island with a huge history. If you focus on the facts alone, it's still a place that has seen a lot of danger, war, death, and high emotions. The hope is that the descendants, like I mentioned, who were kind of forced out from war in 1378, the hope is that the descendants of Poveglia and the people of Venice can one day have their island back to create new memories and shed the rumors of evil doctors and scary ghosts. And that, my friends, is the real story of Poveglia.
Wow.
yay.
I
Thank you,
learned a
Megan.
Go sound effects. Part of me is bummed that it's not real.
Did you
I
find a lot
mean-
of like stories of people having like experiences that seem like they could have kind of been true? Like even if you think about the fact that there are so many people that are buried
Nope.
there, that there was like a hospital. No, they were all like
It's
outlandish.
It's the same. Not even sound bites. It's the same threads of a story on Wikipedia, on every blog that I found, on every website that I found. It's just the same regurgitated, like, incorrect facts.
Wow.
Okay.
So how,
Because again-
how did you know to debunk this? I'm so curious.
Because, I mean, I kept looking for Poveglia because I was trying to get as much info as possible. And it's really fun when a topic you're going to do kind of has video. Like, I find that interesting. So there is one guy that I've seen. He does all kinds of, like, history and kind of science videos. So I found one. He had a new channel. His name is Simon. You'll know him when you see him. He's a bald guy with glasses, British.
We'll have it referenced on our blog, I assume.
100%. Well,
Okay.
yeah, we'll have that referenced. And so he said, like, I worked with these two people specifically, and he, like, ran through it. And I was, like, mind blown because I watched this after I had done all this research.
So you had to
And I
redo your
found it
research?
No, I had to
Or
do
redo
a
your
part
notes?
two.
Okay.
But here's
Yeah.
the thing, too, is that we all know that Wikipedia is a great, like, first step. You wouldn't read that and say that is fact. Unless, like, you know for sure because however you know. But it's a great first step. So then what I did is that I actually, like, looked at the links.
Yeah.
For sources. And so I'm just trying to think of an example. So something about, 1922 insane asylum, evil doctor. Click on the reference, and it said like National
It's like
Geographic. No. So, but it was something like I would trust National Geographic.
Yeah.
So I click on the source, and it was just the footnote to a photo that a photographer had put. So the photographer just put in the myth that he knew.
Okay.
And so Wikipedia quoted that as fact. I'm like, that's not
Yeah.
fact at all.
I mean, I love
So I-
Wikipedia, but yeah, it is, anyone can
It's just a jumping
contribute
point.
to it, right? So, or
Yeah,
Do you know
no,
what
I
that
agree.
just reminded me of? That reminded me of the show, was it Painkiller? There was two shows that were both about oxycodone, and they were talking about how one of their selling points that they had, that they put in like all of their pamphlets, was this footnote of this quote from this one article. But when somebody finally went digging and found the article, it was not even an actual science-based article. It was an opinion piece that they were basing all their like facts
Wow.
and information for oxycodone
Like,
on.
do your research.
Yeah, so it was like they just kind of like that, like what you said. It's like, hey, we're all building off this one fact that we found, but the fact is just like someone regurgitating some info
So-
that they found that wasn't even necessarily true. It also has no
Well,
basis.
I'm building on my notes, and I find this one video, which will be linked, of course, and then the fact that he had sources, like I worked with these researchers directly. I think one was like a doctor or one was a anthropologist. So like that was their job, and they looked into this. And he said, oh, here's their book, but it's in Italian. Here's their podcast too. Like, and so then I went back and I'm like, let me look through Wikipedia, because Wikipedia had all this incorrect info, and it was sourced from like blogs written by, me, like just written by no one. I'm like, that's unreal. And I think that most of the websites, it's supposed to be like, oh, it's a haunted place. Here's the folklore. I don't think anyone claims, because you cannot prove a ghost is real per se. So a lot of it is just like fun stories.
have
So
you
I
ever
think
seen
that that's
Ghostbusters though?
Different. That's a documentary, right?
Yeah, it is.
So I just thought it was really interesting. It's still a very cool story. It's a very, very cool island. Like we had said a couple times this episode. anything that is abandoned is inherently creepy. It's kind of like that, like liminal space kind of thing,
Yes.
where the building should be functional, should have people working. Why are all the windows broken? Why are the walls crumbling? Why are there plants inside? It makes you feel
begs
uncomfortable.
so many questions. Like, why did people leave this
Exactly.
place? Why would
And you can kind of fill in the gaps. Like, oh, it was a hospital. This doesn't look right. And then it's spooky. And so for you to jump to haunted is incredibly easy if you are inclined to like that kind of thing.
And I kind of am. But
Yeah.
I 100%
I
am.
love that
So,
you gave us the facts and that.
I know. I'm sorry that I broke some hearts.
well,
but I mean,
I
this is
didn't know
how-
about it, so you only broke my heart for about 15 minutes, and then I was able to recover. So I didn't know about this island.
She hadn't been holding on to this hope that this was real for years and years and years.
Yeah.
See, I have heard about this island for years. I just never did any research into it. I knew a little bit about it, but I mean, I learned more doing the research.
Was this ever
Doesn't
covered by
mean I don't
M?
wanna
Did you say
go.
this was covered by M, and then that's why we drink?
I don't know if I looked.
Oh, I wonder.
I mean, obviously, we've all been to this
I don't
stuff for
recall,
years.
but
Yeah.
I might have missed episodes along the way.
It's not even that I miss an episode; it's that I've listened to all of them. So, like, by the time you're in 300 episodes, you don't necessarily remember everything that you that they've told
that-
you.
that is
yeah.
And also too, if I hadn't found that one YouTube video by a guy who prides himself on research and facts, and then had the research and facts to back it up, everything is echoing the same story. So there is like, where would you find the information unless you go to Venice and you go into the archives and you speak Italian?
I mean,
So-
we could have done that if you wanted to.
We still can. You know
We
what?
still-
Why,
what are we doing?
why don't we check their research? Like, let's go and like make sure that they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
When you were in
so yeah.
Italy, did you go to
That's-
Venice?
No.
Okay, so we can still make it happen.
Even if I've already been.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
let's go
But
again.
it's nice to go somewhere you haven't been and explore. So
I feel like I saw Italy for 45 seconds. I know that's not true. That's how it felt. So I'm happy to go
I
back.
will go to anywhere in
Yeah.
Italy again, even the exact places that I went because I was 16. So
Okay, now this is just
my God, that was
hypothetical.
20 years
So I don't want to talk about it. Shh. This is hypothetical. Police, if you're listening, just turn it down. Hypothetically,
So, Connor,
should we
turn
go
it
to
down.
Italy? Connor, turn this part down. Hypothetically, we go to Italy. Hypothetically, we see a bunch of boat drivers, and hypothetically, we ask them, "Hey, for 60 euro, we'll do 20 euro a piece. Could you drop us off at Poveglia at like 9 a.m., pick us up at 2 p.m.?" Hypothetically,
and
what would we say? Just in
they would say no.
so they would say
would
no,
say
but like,
no.
would we also say no? Like,
I mean,
that's
I would,
illegal,
yeah,
sir.
Yeah, I would also say no.
I mean,
cannot
I
do
am a
that.
little terrified about being dropped off in an island that no one's on,
Okay,
and
what
hope
about
that
if we
they come
rent?
back.
Oh no, because if you leave
Maybe
the
we
boat
need
there,
to definitely save some of the money for the pickup, so that way there's just incentive.
Half
for them
now,
to-
half
Oh,
later.
Fair.
Yeah.
And also, like, really, truly, worst case scenario, one of us, Chantel, swims to the Lazaretto.
I'm actually I was the
Okay.
probably the
Oh my
best.
God,
No,
you
she
were the
was a
lifeguard. It's just because Chantel's so oceany. I just default to you, like, you're ocean, right?
I was actually already thinking that I'm like, I could swim that if I
Okay,
had
well, just
to.
P.S. So now you've just volunteered yourself. You will
I
then
mean,
swim to the
I
Lazaretto.
will swim as long
and
as
you will
this
get us
water is safe.
Well, I mean,
if
it's
it's
a
full of-
lagoon.
It's
If
like
it's
a
full of
little-
sharks, then we are going to send Chantel because she wants to do that.
Here we go.
She can telepathically say,
know-
"I'm your friend."
I know a shark will hug me. Okay, I just know it. He'll be like,
With its
"Oh,
mouth.
no, you're huggable," and then I will ride his fin all the way to shore. That's what's gonna
As you speak
happen.
to each other,
yeah, telepathically.
brain to
maybe
brain.
maybe a dolphin.
Whatever. Maybe even a killer whale. Even though I'd be more terrified to see a killer whale than a shark. But yeah, let's do it.
I don't think killer whales are in this part.
Killer whales are doing some crazy stuff right now.
really are.
They
Get
are.
off. I mean, I kind of like the idea of them like taking back their ocean, but maybe go for like the SeaWorld folks and not just like general people trying to.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure.
Boat
Go
around.
after those boats that are like really polluting the waters, but like they literally will just attack for the sake of attacking. So they are scarier than a shark if you see one in the water. That video that you sent us today, that was the whole thing. He's like, oh, look, a really
That's why
cool
we're calling
whale.
them killer whales and not
Honestly,
orcas.
I know for a while there, they
Orca
were like,
sounds so
they were like,
sweet.
let's give them back their names and call them orcas because they're getting a bad rap for killing people at SeaWorld. And it's like, no, like these guys.
Number one, not that any of those folks deserve to be killed because they do not represent the overall idea of a water park. That's horrifying. But to see that happen, does that not make them think, wow, look at what these animals are doing? Maybe we're the ones in the wrong.
Well, if you watch that one, was it Blackfish, where they talk about
Yeah, I
that
cried
one?
the whole time.
I mean, a lot of the people that did work there, they were like, we knew this wasn't good, but like they felt more guilty leaving, and like who was going to take care of these animals then, and like
That sounds like
stuff.
people in relationships that aren't good.
I know
like
nothing
once
about
you have
that.
an animal in captivity for so long, it's hard to release them sometimes. I'm not sure about specifically killer whales, orcas, but with a lot of animals.
I just feel like the animal brain is so powerful that if you put them somewhere in the ocean safe, they would figure it out. And if they didn't, they probably would rather die on their own terms than die in a tank.
In an ocean than a bathtub, yeah, they would rather for sure. Anyways, that's
got
way
off
off topic.
Yeah.
So
we'll get into that another episode.
Yeah.
to our listeners, have you ever been to Poveglia? Have you heard about it? Do you have a story? Maybe you, quote unquote, didn't get a boat to the island and you didn't spend any time there and you didn't see anything, or maybe you did see something.
Yeah.
So if
Let us
anyone
know.
has any connection. So when I did ask Julia was like, haha, I have never heard of this. So I'm like, okay, well, listen when it comes out. Because
Well, I feel less bad about never hearing of it now.
you
that
know
you're
what?
telling
I mean,
me
I
so.
forget how big Italy is. It's not like some little tiny country. I mean, yes, it's not like Canada. Canada is humongous. But if you are born and raised in the north, as she is, and you don't spend tons of time down in the south, or if you do, you just vacation for a week here or there, or even if you're not really into scary stuff, maybe it just never really came up. And again, it sounds like real Italians do not believe in the myth. So it's just like all these tourists who believe in the myth. But if you have any experience, even any ghost experience at all, please tell us.
Yeah, we definitely.
I'm so
wanna hear that
curious.
for sure.
Yes, I love people's real life experiences.
I know.
Those are the ones that kind of freak me out.
I don't have any, so please tell us.
I want to have
Okay.
one. I want to.
And I guess we're going to leave it there until next time.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for
I love you.
listening.
Bye-bye.
Please tell us about your ghosts, okay?
Yes, let's
Bye.
live vicariously through you. Bye.
Thank you for listening today. We loved having you. If you liked the episode, share with your friends, family, or anyone who would enjoy it. Also, take a minute to review the Coast Files podcast on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Leaving us a comment or like really helps. You can email us at coastfilespod@gmail.com, follow us on Instagram at coastfilespod, or visit our website at www.coastfiles.com. You can find the sources for today's episode on our website. See you next week with a new episode.